So I was asked if I would show the next stage of my strawberries, taking them down after they fruited and we've enjoyed the fruit, and what I do in terms of getting them through the winter for the next year, because these are first year plants and next year they'll be even better. So they're still in their baskets at the moment. I've had them out in the rain. It's given them a really good soaking, which has made them all, well, really perk up. And now I'm going to transplant them so that they're ready for the winter. And I'm going to use some old compost because I'm not too precious about the soil that they go into. And I'm going to use this potato compost that I've recently emptied. So it's not been fed, it's fairly bland, but it's still got plenty of goodness in it. And I'm going to put that into some troughs and then transplant the strawberries. I'll show you. So this is what I call the nursery area. It's a bit of a grand name really. It's just where I keep the compost and my pots, and it's under the shade of this sycamore tree. There's lots of flies, but the main thing is that it affords it some protection during the winter. So these plants that I'm going to put into these troughs, they won't be exposed to any really cold weather, at least not frost, because this shades them, and hopefully they'll come through the winter, be nice and strong for when I put them in the polytunnel early next year. So I'm going to fill these up and we'll get into the baskets. Okay, they're about half full, which is probably enough, because when I put the plants in, there's plenty of soil around the roots, and we'll hopefully get them all planted up. So this is my first basket. Got those back there, and we'll just get the chains out of the way. And in the center of this basket, I've got a terracotta reservoir, which helps to keep the plants watered when they're in the heat of the polytunnel. So we'll get that out gently because they can break. That's what it looks like. And of course it's full of water because it's been outside in the rain. So we'll put that somewhere safe and store it ready for next year. And then we'll get into these. So we've got a bit of grass in here because they do use some horse manure in there. So there is always a risk of a bit of growth from weeds. And then I'm going to just turn this upside down. It doesn't matter how rough you are with this at the moment. I'm going to take these runners off because I want all the goodness to go into just conditioning that plant ready for next year's use. So let's get it out. Get the basket out of the way. And you can see there's pretty sturdy plants in here. There we go. And I'm going to try and put the bulk of that root in. Make a nice big hole for it. Get the soil around it. Give it a firm down. And these troughs have got holes in the bottom, so during the winter when it rains, it will drain away. Get another one. There we are. I'll take that broken leaf off and get him in here. A bit more compost. And we'll put him in the middle. I reckon I'll get 3 plants in here, and then that'll mean that they're nice, big, healthy plants ready for next year. What else have we got in here? Anything else? So that's basically all used compost, and I'm not going to waste it. So I'll empty this one out because we'll carry on using that, and all of this, which is spent strawberry soil and compost, is going to go in my compost bin, and it too will be part of next year in terms of the compost I use, probably in the potatoes. So nothing goes to waste. It's just a little bit of refreshed compost or different compost for these plants. So we've got one more to go in. Same routine. So there we are. That's 7 really good, strong strawberry plants, 1 year old and ready for next year. When you pile an awful lot up in your pot area, you just have to be a bit careful it doesn't topple over. Oh well. So they're looking fantastic and they'll just sit there. If they do get dry, I might water them in the winter, but really not so much. The rain does a great job of work, and it does work through this tree, especially when the leaves are falling. Now, 1 or 2 people have asked me to show that stage where I get them ready for the winter, but I've replied to them that what I am going to do this year, which I haven't done previously, is leave some of them in these baskets. It may mean that I have to feed the basket a bit more, but it would take an awful lot of work out of next year when I set these up. What I can't do is leave any of the baskets with this terracotta well in it, because the frost would just shatter it, and last year I lost one, so I am going to make sure they're out. They do get really stuck inside when the roots of these strawberries start growing around them, but there we go. That's got to come out, otherwise we will have a problem. So there's going to be a number of these that stay just like that. I will take the runners off because, as I said before, I want all the effort to go into keeping these plants nice and strong. These really large baskets are going to be ideal, I think, for trying to get through the whole of the winter period. And I'm taking these runners off while he's trying to. And of course, runners are really useful for starting your plants for next year. But I've got so many good quality first year plants, I really don't need to keep these this year. So if there's anybody on the allotment that wants them, I'll be sharing them out. There's plenty in the polytunnel. And these are going to be a bit of an experiment, but wouldn't it be fantastic if I don't have to do all that preparation early in the cold months next year? So I'm going to keep all of these because these discs go into the baskets and stop the water from draining away when they're in the heat of the polytunnel. And there is a risk with these that they get a bit waterlogged, so I will keep an eye on them, but under the shade of this tree it's usually not a problem. So these baskets will be ready for next year. So I'm going to trim now, get all these extra runners off and just thin down anything that's dead. I'm going to take it away, and during the winter, if I think there's too many dead leaves, which does happen, then I'll trim those out as well. And then as we get into spring, I'll just leave the last of the leaves to protect any new growth. But under this tree, it doesn't normally need that. I've had lots of great comments about these collars on these courgettes, what they're for, what they're normally used for. So normally they go around tomatoes, and the theory is you feed into the top area where the feeding roots are of a tomato, and you water into the well, which then gives them a long-lasting slow drip of moisture. But I've used them this year on the courgettes, and it's been an interesting experiment. I was advised that it could damage them, and that was a really good observation, and I thought, well, I need to do a bit of both. I'll get a really good comparison then. So I took the collar off that one, and I took the collar off that one. And of course, what that does do is it lets the plant lean over. That's pretty natural for a courgette, but the other plants have remained much more erect, and well, certainly on this one, It's doing really well. Does it damage the leaves on the rim of the collar? Absolutely it does. You can see there's one there that's being damaged. There's one there that's broken off. It's still green, strangely enough. And here we've got a bigger leaf that's been damaged by the collar. But most of the plant isn't affected, and as long as it gets reasonably well established, I think it's going to be okay. There's another one that's bent over there. So I suppose the jury's out. There's a little while to go yet before we can say it did harm or it didn't. I am pretty sure that if we had a really windy day, it could damage them significantly. So there is quite a risk, I think. But so far, so good. And I'll leave you to be the judge of which plants are looking the healthiest. There's a real mix, but we've got courgettes on all of them. And there's going to be a courgette feast soon. And my favourite is courgette and bacon soup. Look it up on the internet. Mrs. K does a fabulous job of it, but very tasty. Well, these broad beans are doing nicely, very vigorous, but they get to that height when they just want to lean over, and that's the time to give them a bit of a help. So I'm going to put some stakes all the way around them and then just tie some string or some twine so that they get the support they need. Otherwise they'll just end up breaking and you'll lose your crop. So we don't want that, having given all the effort into getting them sown and building them up, getting them into the ground. We just don't want to waste all that good work. So I'm going to put probably 4 canes either side and 1 at each end, and then just wrap some string around it so that they get that support. And it should probably hold them up. The ones in the middle, well, I've still got those crop net cover rings in the middle, so they're helping. But the plants are mainly supported by each other in the centre, so it should be all right. Right, I'll get the others in and then we'll get that twine around them. This method of wrapping the, in this case, cord around the, well, pole 3 or 4 times just means that if you need to move it up and down, you can, and that compensates for whether you get a small plant emerging or whether there's some bigger plants that need it lifted up. So 1 piece all the way around, wrap 2 or 3 times, does the job. Well, I'm pleased to say my lily, which is water lily Leideckery fulgens, has now got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 leaves on it, and well, they're all doing really well. So I don't know whether I'm going to get a flower this year, but it's looking great. And my tadpoles, well, they've got legs. They've certainly got back legs, and I hadn't seen any with front legs. And then the other day I went down into here to try and weed, and a very small frog jitted away and came across and into the pond. So we've obviously got a frog population that's underway, and hopefully that'll help with the slugs. Brilliant. I love it when the courgettes and the squash get going, because you know they're going to survive, and you know you're heading into the summer, warmer months, and that means hopefully you'll get loads of squash and pumpkins. Might do a bit of pollination help this year with a small paintbrush. See how we go, see how many fruit start to form naturally and whether any need a helping hand. But let me show you the growth that we've got on these. So they've really not been in these beds for very long. Look at this, absolutely going for it. So these 3 are cracking on nicely. Just seeing if I've got a label. Should have a label in here somewhere, because that's what I've learnt to do over the years, because I forget. And this is a classic label, which is really starting to disappear. And well, I can't tell what that is. I'll have to go back to my video. That's one of the advantages of YouTubing. You can see what you planted. This is squash, blue Hubbard, and this is from saved seed. And this one is really going for it. Absolutely loads of flowers forming on there. And then over to here, and this is the most important one really for me, small sugar. And I've usually had 1 or 2 plants if I'm lucky. This year 3 fabulous strong plants with flowers forming. This one's a really interesting one. This is the pumpkin red warty thing. And wow, flowers galore in there. So I'm really hopeful for these, and it's a pumpkin that's apparently a really good flavour. So interesting. Not sure what this is. I know what this is. This is a mare's tail, and it's coming out. There we go. Let's get that last bit out. I put this in because I had a space, and I don't know. Really can't tell what that is yet, but it has got a flower, and the flower's been a bit eaten. So jury's out on that one. And then these, which are also looking incredibly good. Loads of growth, really strong plants, and yeah, every single one of them covered in flowers. This variety here is green Hokkaido, really pale silvery leaf, absolutely fantastic. I think all 4 of those are Hokkaido, and then this one is strawberry crown. I guess it's a variation on the crown prince. But unlike the crown prince, it didn't need the seeds to go in to the fridge and get really cold for a period of time. These went straight in, and again, they're full of flowers. So, my squash and pumpkins are really getting me excited. Growth over there in the pots. So this is horseradish, and this is Jerusalem artichoke. And the horseradish I split up this year, and well, it's doing really well. And it was there. And a few of the roots has obviously started some self-spreading horseradish. I have to keep an eye on that because it can get a little bit out of hand, but it'll be interesting to see how it does. I'm loving how the garden's looking. The flower bed is fantastic. And these sweet peas, well, we've had so many sweet peas in the house from these bushes, and I never did have to tie them to the canes. It's funny how this oregano that's growing in the middle seemed to support that bunch really, really well. And all the flowers are coming along, and these penstemons are glorious. And this is like a blue purpley one, which is really, really attractive. And we have mesembryanthemums in the front, and every time the sun comes out we get a great show from them. And this little bunch, the support here is coming from this autumn fruiting raspberry. It's the only autumn fruiting raspberry I've got, but it's doing very well. It's spreading and it's working as a good support. This dahlia this year, and this is the original plant. We actually took it out of the ground and put it back in the spring, and that's doing nicely. And the bit that we split off, that seems to be doing quite well as well. So quite pleased with that. I say we, but of course Mrs. K is the flower gardener. I help out where I can, but she has a much better eye for spreading them out and positioning them than I do. Well, the calendula are coming through now, which is great to see. Need a little bit of weeding in there, but it does look like we're going to get a good crop of calendula for the calendula balm that we make. And there's quite a few in there also, amongst these self-sown poppies. Aren't they glorious? And of course the poppy bed was this one, and that's doing well as well. So, a bit of weeding in those at some point. So this pear tree has given me a fabulous crop of pears for the last 2 years. Absolutely amazing. And I prune it each year, and the shape's good. I've got quite a lot of those, what you call water shoots, sort of strong growing shoots at the top, which are the product of pruning reasonably hard at the top. But if you get into this tree and you start looking for the pears, there isn't a single one. And the general consensus of opinion is that the warm weather that we had in April resulted in the flowers progressing fast, but it was too cold for the bees and the insects, and subsequently we didn't get pollination. And I just wonder whether it's nature's way of giving a tree like this a good rest, and hopefully next year and subsequent years we'll do okay. But I really do think it's been about the weather. I do hope you enjoyed the video today. If you did, click the subscribe button, click the like button, and if you want updates from me each time I upload a video, click the bell and select all. I do hope you have a great day. Diolch yn fawr.